Let's start with the lie we've all been fed, the one wrapped in empowerment, but rooted in avoidance. Just get under a new one, as if your body is a shortcut, as if sex can silence the sadness, as if touching someone new can erase the hands you're still aching for. This advice isn't new, it's everywhere in music, movies, your group chat after a breakup. But the truth is, rebound culture has convinced women that healing means performing confidence instead of actually cultivating it. You're not healing, you're distracting. You're not over him, you're out of your body. Because deep down, when the night ends and the phone goes silent, you still feel it. Not the thrill, but the ache. You cannot override grief with lust. You cannot bury heartbreak under chemistry because your soul is smarter than your surface. And the wound you refuse to feel will resurface in the next man, in the next spiral, in the next morning after regret. Getting under someone new might give you a moment of control, yeah, but real healing, that requires surrender. When people say, go have fun, what they really mean is go forget. Forget what he did. Forget how you feel. Forget that you're still bleeding by pretending you're brand new. But healing doesn't come through forgetting. Healing comes through feeling. And most people would rather run into someone else than to sit in the stillness of their own heartbreak. You're not broken because you're hurting. You're not weak because you miss him, but you do become emotionally fragmented when you use a new connection as a substitute for completion. Escaping into someone else's arms might distract your mind, but it doesn't fool your nervous system. Your body remembers, your spirit remembers, and that ache you feel isn't for a new man, it's for yourself. The version of you that had dreams before the disappointment and embarrassment, the girl who gave love before she started begging for it, the woman who existed before her peace was stolen by chaos dressed as a connection. Letting someone into your bed won't get him out of your head. And love doesn't heal through substitution, it heals through restoration. There's a rush that comes with new attention, that dopamine hit when someone texts you, hey, you up? Or calls you beautiful, like it's magic. And for a moment, it is magic, not because you like them, but because it quiets the storm of feeling unwanted. But here's the problem with that: when the high fades, the emptiness expands. You weren't craving intimacy, you were craving anesthesia, something to dull the pain, something to prove you're still desirable. But validation without intention is a sugar rush, quick, sweet, and always followed by a crash. So now you've let someone into your space, but they don't know your heart. They're not part of your future. They're just feeling the space your healing was meant to occupy. And while your friends are cheering you on, like, yes, girl, get back out there, you know deep down, this isn't forward. It's just circular. You're spinning around in pain and calling it progress. The danger of rebound culture isn't that it makes you wild, it's that it makes you numb. And numbness is seductive because if you don't feel, you don't have to deal. But the wound doesn't disappear, it just waits quietly until it explodes. There's a reason so many of us try to heal through distraction, not because we're shallow, but because we're scared. Stillness forces reflection, and reflection reveals patterns we're not always ready to face. When you reach for a new body right after heartbreak, you're not just avoiding grief, you're avoiding accountability. Because if you slow down long enough, you'll have to ask yourself the harder questions. Why did I tolerate what I did? Why did I stay past the first red flag? Why do I equate being wanted with being worthy? And those questions are heavier than any breakup. They dig into your childhood wounds, your self worth, your identity. So, of course, it feels easier to grab a drink, line up a new date, and pretend like you're healed. But deep healing can't be rushed, and it sure can't be outsourced to someone who doesn't know your history, your heart, or your hurt. The truth is, A new body can't give you a new beginning. Not if you're still carrying the same wounds. You can change the setting, the music, even the name in your phone. But if you don't change what you believe about love, you'll keep reenacting the same story with different characters. Every time you give your body away while your heart is still bleeding, you teach yourself that your value is in what you offer, not in who you are. And slowly, piece by piece, you begin to fragment. You show up in the moment, but you're disconnected from the meaning. You're physically present, but you're spiritually absent. This kind of detachment isn't freedom, it's fatigue. The kind that creeps in when your spirit is screaming for rest, but you keep silencing it with situations that feel good for a second and hollow for hours afterward. You start confusing empowerment with performance. You smile to prove you've moved on. You post to prove you're unbothered. You perform confidence while privately feeling more invisible than ever. And the longer you ignore the call to come back to yourself, the more dangerous the rebound becomes. Not because of who you sleep with, but because of what you lose in the process. You lose your softness, you lose your clarity, you lose your sacred no. That quiet wisdom that tells you this doesn't honor me, this doesn't nourish me, this doesn't align with the woman I'm becoming. Getting over someone isn't about replacing the connection. It's about recovering the parts of yourself you lost inside it. Real healing isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with a playlist, a revenge body, or a rebound. It's quiet, it's awkward, it's painful in ways that don't always look powerful from the outside. Because real healing is choosing to sit with yourself on the nights when distraction feels easier. It's crying without rushing to text someone just to feel seen. It's deleting the number, not to punish him, but to protect you. Healing means you finally stop needing someone else to validate your existence. You learn how to pour back into your own cup. You create rituals of peace instead of seeking temporary highs. You rediscover yourself not through someone else's gaze, but through the sacred act of self return. It's not about staying single forever. It's about staying grounded long enough to know you're not choosing from loneliness. You're choosing from wholeness because you can't heal what you're still performing through. You can't evolve while you're emotionally hiding. You can't grow if you're still reenacting the same wounds under new names. This isn't a punishment. It's not a death sentence. It's a detox, a reset, a reintroduction to the version of you that no longer needs to prove her value through proximity to a man. We've glamorized detachment, but not the kind that comes from healing, the kind that comes from emotional escape. This unbothered culture has us thinking that if you move on fast enough, loud enough, publicly enough, you'll look empowered. But empowerment without embodiment is still emptiness. You can't reclaim your power by abandoning yourself, not your heart, not your needs, not your grief. Because every time you pretend you're fine, every time you perform strength while quietly crumbling, every time you use someone else's attention to silence your own intuition, you disconnect from your soul. And here's the thing about escapism: it always promises relief, but never delivers restoration. Real power isn't loud. It's not the post breakup flex or the late night distraction. Real power is peace. It's saying, I'm hurting and still choosing healing. It's declining invitations that don't align with your growth. It's sitting with your sadness long enough to understand what it's trying to teach you. And that's why healing is so misunderstood, because true power doesn't parade itself. It roots itself in stillness, in clarity, in truth. There comes a point in your healing where you have to make a decision. Will you keep handing your body to people who don't value your soul? Or will you pause long enough to come back to yourself? Because every time you let someone touch you who has no intention of holding you teach your spirit that it has to split itself in two to feel seen. You don't need to be touched right now. You need to be held by truth, by peace, by your own self respect. This is what reclaiming looks like. You stop giving people emotional access just because they asked for physical access. You stop explaining why your silence is your boundary. You stop answering phones you used to run to just to prove you were still wanted. Your body isn't a reward for charm. It's not an apology for having feelings. It's not a placeholder for the intimacy you're still grieving. Your body is sacred, and your healing deserves better than to be diluted by casual confusion. Reclaiming yourself means reestablishing what closeness means, not proximity, not touch, but safety, presence, peace. And no, you're not cold. You're just no longer performing warmth in exchange for attention. You're no longer mistaking access for love. You're finally starting to see yourself clearly. And when that happens, you stop begging to be seen by anyone else. There's a kind of clarity that only comes from sitting in the silence, not the lonely silence, the honest silence. The moment when you stop filling your time with people who don't matter and finally sit with the truth you've been avoiding. That's emotional sobriety. And when you stop chasing highs, romantic, sexual, or superficial, you come back to your emotional center. No more running, no more masking the pain with a new name and a new night. Because even when it looks like strength to move on quickly, there's something even more powerful about being still, about sitting in the ache long enough to understand where it comes from and choosing clarity over chemistry, peace over potential, wholeness over distraction. It's in that peace, raw and unfiltered, that real healing begins. You're no longer chasing closure from a man, you're giving it to yourself through truth, through honesty, through every no you used to be afraid to say. This isn't about isolation. It's about integration, the kind that requires you to feel fully so you can heal fully. You don't have to numb it. You just have to name it. That was pain. That was disappointment. That was abandonment masquerading as love. And once you name it, you stop needing someone new to erase it. You stop needing a distraction to justify your worth. You stop needing someone to pick you to feel like you matter. Emotional sobriety is powerful because it teaches you presence. It teaches you how to sit in that ache without reaching for anesthesia, how to stay grounded when your ego wants validation so bad, how to say, this hurts, but I'm not running from it this time. Because the goal isn't to get over him so quickly you forget the lesson. The goal is to understand the version of you who chose him in the first place so you never have to learn this lesson the hard way again. Getting over someone isn't a race. It's not about how fast you can bounce back, how loud you can pretend to be happy, or how soon someone else calls you beautiful. Healing has nothing to do with being chosen again. It has everything to do with choosing yourself this time completely. You don't need to get under someone new to prove you're worthy. You don't need a new distraction to silence the echo of your old one. You don't need to pretend you're fine when your heart is still unpacking the pain. You need presence. You need pause. You need permission, your own, to stop performing like you're healed and finally become it. Because healing isn't about getting even. It's not about pretending he never mattered. It's not about flexing your new options. It's about reclaiming the energy you gave away in pieces and remembering that right love doesn't require you to lose yourself to feel chosen. So if you're asking how to get over him, don't look for a new one. Look for the old you, the version of you who existed before the disappointment, before the compromise, before the emotional exhaustion, because she's still there and she's ready to come home, not to him, to you. And that is how you truly get over a man, not by getting under a new one, but by rising back into yourself. There's something sacred about your body. But when you use it to outrun your emotions, it becomes a battlefield. You start using touch to silence the truth. You let people in physically when they were never meant to be there emotionally. That's not liberation, that's leakage. Energy is spilling everywhere because you're not anchored within. And every time you give someone access just to avoid feeling alone, you teach your body to brace for closeness instead of relaxing into it. Reclaiming your healing means reclaiming your body's peace, not letting it be transaction for attention, not letting it be a placeholder for the intimacy you actually crave. It means learning that being touched isn't the same as being loved, and being alone isn't the same as being unloved. There is a difference, and you know it now. Let's be real. Sometimes it's not about missing him, it's about fearing the silence that comes after. It's the late nights, the morning with no text, the weekends with no plans. But being afraid of being alone is human. It's what you do with that fear that defines your healing. Do you feel the silence with someone who doesn't see you? Do you settle for attention just to avoid absence? Or do you finally look at that fear in the face and you say, you won't drive me anymore? Because loneliness is only dangerous when you let it lead your choices. But when you sit with it, learn from it, let it pass through you, it loses its power. And in that stillness, you find out you were never truly alone. You just hadn't heard your own voice in a while. The real secret, getting over someone isn't about time, it's about truth. It's about becoming your own safe place again, where your peace is protected, where your no is honored, where your softness is held like gold, not exploited like currency. Healing means you stop searching for someone to prove you're lovable and start showing up for yourself like someone who already is. It means you stop handing out emotional backstage passes to people who only come for the show, and you start choosing relationships that feel like home, not chaos. So when you finally ask, how do I get over him? The answer isn't out there, it's in you. And she's not waiting to be saved, she's waiting to be seen by you.